All right, so I was thinking back to, well, I wasn't thinking, it just jumped in my head about um my parents' generation, and maybe it was just the people I saw, but I doubt it. But it got me thinking to their parents because I'm looking like, how the fuck did this happen? And their parents had to be obligatorily trash as parents, not as people, but as parents. It's almost like they got comfortable with where. And I'm just talking about black people. I don't know if white people went through this or not. I'm talking about black people. It's almost like they got comfortable with what was going on and where they were, and they just kind of just. But then maybe they were the first generation to say, "My kid's going to have a spoiled life," right? As if you could afford that. And I'm not talking financially, but just talking culturally, as you can afford to start spoiling your children rotten, like like it wouldn't come back and backfire. And I say this because my parents, and I'm saying that to for the setup of the discussion, they own at least houses, right? They had a somewhat sense of ownership, and I've seen this across several families, connected to mine or not. And then for their kids to eventually kind of just fade away and not own shit. And it's just like, what the hell were they doing? How did they think about parenting? Did they really just think there was it was just all gravy and they didn't need to parent? And their parents are mostly in their 70s. Some of them can range from like back to as low as the late 60s and early as late as the early 80s. But for the most part, their parents are in their 70s. So whatever generation that is. And I'm going to just give a brief description of what I saw in my neighborhood. Well, one of the main neighborhoods that I grew up in, which is there were our. It seemed to really affect like the men for some reason. I don't know if it's like one of those generations that prioritized the girls going to school or whatever, but this definitely affected the men. Some people say it was because of the welfare as well, whatever. But I pretty much saw just a just group of just adult men kind of just like go about every day, day to day, essentially doing nothing. Like even having kids, but it's like the ones that had kids but do nothing. And they all of their parents owned houses on the block, with the exception of one who he did pretty much do something and then just fade into a obligatory situation. But those dudes, like, go back to that block now, all those houses are either torn down or one of them is squatting in the house. Dude, your dad was successful enough to raise this many kids, own something, and then we get to you and it's like, you're a bum. Why? Why did this happen with so many people in that specific generation when their parents weren't bums? What happened? I remember doing, if you all followed me long enough, I did a video where I put up on Google Maps. I chose you the liquor store that these same men spent so much time at, so much money. But if you were to like look at what they did, volunteer wise or donation wise at their kids' school, how it would be ridiculous and lopsided. Like their kids, future of school, damn near zero. But at this fucking store or gas station, I guess like most of the time, it's like they didn't even know how to be parents. It's like they only knew how to be teenagers. And that to me goes back to their parents. What the fuck did they teach them? Can you please, the hell? Can you please ask these people's parents, the people who are in their 70s, what the fuck they taught their kids? Because it couldn't have been much of shit if that's how they turn out. And I know it's not just these group of men. I know it's not. Or maybe it's just the Detroit area because I can only really tell you about shit from my city. But I really want to know what they were doing. What happened? Why was their only thing like event in their lives is having kids? Seriously, majority of these dogs, that's all they did. They didn't turn a corner as far as not even in fucking maturity, but just solely kids. And one example I want to tie into this to show why it's important is because I when I look at a lot of these when I watch a lot of these panels, which I do less and less every day, because circular reasoning. But one of the main questions that women like to ask when they would jump on the panel was, "Where are you leading us to? Why we allow you to lead and submit to you? And where are you leading us to?" First, let's take the metaphor as it is, face value, which is you're actually leading on some journey to something, right? Okay, cool. So let's say what they all want, they get what they all want, which is the guy leads them on the journey to family wealth, right? And it is it doesn't, and every bloodline is not going to happen in your absolute specific lifetime. In most cases, what it would be is you'll be on that journey, you get to it so far, you stop. But because of what you taught your offspring, they pick up from there and keep going. Until at some point, one of the generations, boom, at the top of the generational growth in America, right? So when you see the absolute decline from one generation to the next, I mean, they just straight up decline. Well, that's kind of the whole like, how can you even get there? How can you even if you take one step and then it's like, all right, we straight. And one thing just popped in my head. I remember and he said this more than once. I know he has. I've heard it more than once, but on a few occasions when I was watching Bernard Riley's panel and they will be talking about something as far as like the behavior in men with women and blah blah blah. And Angry Man would jump on and go, "This happens in every culture of men where they get as many resources as possible and as many women as possible." And first off, I think he meant every culture has the men that do that because numbers wise, men generally just can't do that. It's that the men that do that. But even so, either way, could black people really afford that type of behavior? Could they really afford that? Could they really start afford the whole fuck fuck monogamy? These dudes right here gonna get all of them. Can we really afford that at this point? So again, I think I don't know why, but obviously there has to be something fundamentally wrong with the way we look at it. There has to be because there's no way that you could at some point have one generation with at least a little bit, and then just a straight up drop the next at least three. Because I don't think I'm the second removed from the generation talking about, but the next generation don't seem to have. In fact, in America, we're pushing this idea of don't own shit. Which, if when people ask why is owning such a big deal, it's because I know technically anybody can be approached with get the fuck out of your house and you're taking it. But for the most part, owning things is important because when you have more things to leverage and leave to your next offspring, you have You have more of ability, right? At least that's the way I see it. But maybe I'm wrong. I apparently supposed to say, but that's all I got. Be right, not positive. No.